and welcome into the Rotoworld Basketball Show. I am Vaughn Dalzell, joined alongside Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports and Raphielle Johnson of NBC Sports as always. And we have a lot to cover today because some series are over, some series are still going, and we know the best series of them all has been the one that we have our eyes on here at the Rotoworld Basketball Show, the Knicks versus the Sixers. God dang it, Dan.
I see what he see. All right, man. All right.
I'm rocking my New York hat. I'm still rocking with Raphaelle here in the Knicks. I'm saying Knicks in 7. Hoping it's Knicks in 6, though. But, Dan, you're hoping it's Sixers in 7. A lot going on with your Sixers, man. You got some good game from Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre in the last game. Not as much from Joel Embiid, one of his worst offensive performances of NBA playoff history for him. So, what do you like? What did you not like from the Sixers so far?
Yeah, I think on my third list of things was we actually got, a half out of Tobias Harris. He did hit some big shots, but again, he just disappears when the moment is the brightest. But this is a Tyrese Maxey podcast right now, man. This dude is averaging 32 points, 5 boards, 7 dimes. He's shooting 50, 43, 87 from the field. Like, just outstanding, man. Him and Brunson just going back and forth. We have a changing of the guard, and it's a lot of this conversation before we got into the season was around, like, can Brunson be a superstar? That dude is a superstar. He's an MVP caliber player, and I think we're also seeing Sixers should probably play through Tyrese Maxey at this point. They should have been doing it earlier in the season. When you don't have to give Joel Embiid so much demand on offense, maybe he doesn't get hurt as much. Make him be more of a rebounding defensive threat, because that's what you need. The reason that the Knicks have been pummeling them is because they get every second chance rebound and, frankly, don't get any loose balls. But when Embiid locks down like he did in OT, hey, look what happens. All right, yeah, Maxey did hit a ridiculous game-winning shot, probably one of the best shots in recent memory in playoff history. But, I'm feeling great as a Sixer fan right now, man. We pushed it to another game, comes back to Philly. Hopefully we can shut down those Chinatown buses or something, because the Knicks were just coming too strong in Philly in Wells Fargo Center. So hopefully Philly gets up for game 6.
Yeah, you could always argue if the Knicks should have fouled the Sixers there in the situation either time with Maxey hitting the big threes. But Tyrese Maxey hitting that 3 from the E in New York was certainly very impressive. And as someone who had the under, I was very upset, Dan. But I thought that Philadelphia played with the desperation needed to keep this series alive. I thought that New York needed guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Raphael, to step up, only scoring 22 points in his last 3 games. He's kind of disappeared. Josh Hart, OG Anunoby stepping up as a second and third scorers, but it's now a 7-man rotation in New York. How are you feeling ahead of game 6?
I'm not too happy. I think the anger comes from a place of guys just randomly getting hurt. I say randomly with a pinch of salt, because it feels like a couple of guys on the other side seem to have a habit of, like, either kicking players in the groin or forearm shivers to the face or diving through legs for loose balls, one of which cost Bojan Bogdanovic the remainder of his season, mind you. So, it's disappointing. Be down to a 7-man rotation. Alec Burks, you're not expecting anything there from him, or either Shake Milton for that matter. I was a bit surprised that Precious Achiuwa did not play last night. That was something that surprised me a bit. I know you had Mitchell Robinson back, but the way that he and OG Anunoby combined to defend Embiid in game 4 in the fourth quarter, I thought we'd see a little bit more of that, but we didn't. But yeah, like Dan said, Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Maxey, they were already on this stage, but I feel like it's even more of a coming out party for those guys. In terms of, we knew the Knicks were going to build around Brunson moving forward, as they already have to a certain extent. Now it's Tyrese Maxey's time in Philadelphia. I know Embiid's got a couple high money years left on his deal, but there's no way that you don't build around Tyrese at this point. Knock on wood, he's stayed healthy throughout his career, and he's shown the ability to take that next step. The only negative for them is that they didn't extend him last fall, because now you're going to cost yourself a little more money. But they do have a lot of cap space left besides him, so that's not a huge deal. Campaign, he didn't play at all. I think, what was it, the first 2 games? Then he stepped up and given them minutes. The Buddy Hield trade, I think the only positive at this point is that it gets some extra cap space in the summer, because he's too worried about his role to kind of help him. Nick Nurse has decided not to play him at all, and rightfully so. So I'm still sticking with the Knicks. I hope it's in 6, but I did say before the series that I expected to go 7.
Yeah, this home court advantage has definitely played a huge key in this one. And yeah, you mentioned a couple players, Raphael. I'm surprised, Buddy Hield, minutes reduced, not a factor at all in this series whatsoever. You said campaign, step it up now. Kyle Lowry posted a dud, 0 points in Game 5. I know Dan loved to see it. Can't believe Kyle Lowry, my guy's still a starting point guard. But there's a lot of players that are going to have to step up here in this Game 6. I'm not feeling very confident that I can trust a lot of these guys, especially when we've seen first or fourth quarters of this series scoring 36, 43 points. A lot of offensive struggles from both teams. So I'm expecting a slower pace game. But before we move on to the next one, predictions. Who wins Game 6? Is there a Game 7? Dan, start with you.
Sixers and 7, man. I got to stick to it. But I got to say, man, this is like the most painfully – yesterday was the most painfully awesome experience I've had in a while. And, like, I feel like every game is just giving us this energy, man, of, like, just haymakers after haymakers, low-scoring games, and then, you know what I'm saying, just some dramatics in the fourth quarter. So I don't know what's going to happen. I just hope that the Sixers can at least push it to 7. And then, they already got one on MSG's floor, so why not get another?
I think the Knicks are going to do it. I'll say Knicks in 6.
Ooh, spicy.
Look, man,
he's had enough. Enough of the antics.
I see the groundswell and like trying to get Philly fans fired up. I don't think that was an issue. In terms of, I know a lot of Knicks fans made their way into the arena for games 3 and 4, but Philly just has to play better if you want more support. And if you're going to call up fans for anything, it'd probably be for letting Knicks fans put a jersey on the Wilt Chamberlain statue after Game 4. That's where it's kind of like, all right, something probably should have gone down after this. No, we're not condoning violence in any way. Let me be clear, but it's like you just gonna walk to your car watching that. It's like, all right, but yeah, I think the Knicks will get it done. Both teams have won on the opposing team's home court in this series, so I don't think it'll be an issue for either team moving forward. But I don't think this is going to be the crushing blow that some people seem to think it is for the Knicks losing Game 5 the way that they did.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think it is the crushing blow either. I think this series will go 7. I think not to say that refs will impact the Game 6 too much, but Game 6 is on a team's home floor is a very, very difficult task to go out there and get a dub.
They impacted Game 5. They was all over Game 5, man. They wanted the Knicks to win that game. Nah,
man. Hey, I'm not hearing that. We got one of our guys taken out in Game 4 for the rest of the season, like I said, and nothing was called beyond a regular foul. Embiid gets to tackle a guy out of midair, and he stays in the game. Like, all I'm saying is this:
6 times.
I'll be concerned if Scott Foster or Tony Brothers show up. That's what I'll say for Game 6.
Yeah, I really hope they let these two teams play because you would argue outside the Cavaliers and Magic series, these two series in particular are the most physical, low-scoring, defensive, and aggressive. So we want to see the best game possible. I want to see a 7-game series, the Knicks win in 7, so I get paid. But I want Tyrese Maxey to get his bag, Dan, so that you guys will be back looking good next year. And shout out to Joel Embiid because he is going through more than just migraine and other health issues right now too. So we didn't talk about the deeper health stuff going on with him, but it's a credit to him to still be out there putting up those minutes as well. But we got to give credit when credit is due. That goes to the Milwaukee Bucks. How about them beating the Pacers without Dame Lillard, without Giannis? And now we're in a situation where Giannis could be a surprise return in Game 6, Raphael. There's rumors, Doc Rivers, he'll spread them. He's saying close, very, very close to return. Do you think Giannis gets in Game 6? If he does, do the Bucks win this series?
I don't know if I can go as far as to say that they'll win a series if those guys come back because we don't know the true severity of those injuries. Like, the reports had them both out for extended periods of time. Was that just, smoke show or is that like legit? Who knows? You're talking about calf and Achilles issues. Those aren't really things to be played around with, as we've seen in the past. So I think if anything, what we saw last night was the how important experience is. Indiana, they haven't been in this position to where they're closing out a series. So from Tyrese Halliburton on down. I think the one person who has that experience is Rick Carlisle, and he's not suiting up. So I think that was the biggest thing. And you had guys like Patrick Beverley and Bobby Portis, coming through in Game 5 after they didn't in Game 4, especially Bobby getting ejected. So you give those guys credit, you give Chris Middleton credit, but I'm not willing to go as far as to say like Dame and Giannis coming back swings the series in Milwaukee's favor immediately. It'll help, but I'm not sure I'd go that far.
Yeah, I've been one to want to fade Milwaukee all year long, especially when the postseason rolls around. And now I find myself kind of believing in there's a route for Milwaukee to actually make some noise. I don't know if they will do it or not. You are rocking the hot hat, Dan. So tell me what you believe in this, because earlier today I went on a show with the whale capper, Drew Disnick of NBC. We do Bet the Edge. And he said, I'm going to convince you of something crazy. He said there's a route for the Bucks to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and there's also a route for Giannis at 125-1 to be the NBA Finals MVP if he comes back. Now, does sound crazy, but the Bucks beating the Pacers, I don't think is that wild. If they get the Knicks or Sixers, who are going to be very fatigued after that series, there's a route for Milwaukee to make noise with Boston down Kristaps Porzingis, right?
Yeah, I think that there's a route for it. I mean, the Pacers just blew a huge opportunity there. I think much respect, as Raph said, to Bobby Portis and the role players. Chris Middleton had a hell of a game. Malik Beasley showed up. Pat Connaughton made an impact. That was the game that they needed. And I don't know that if it's enough if Giannis and Dame can come back, but it did sound like Doc Rivers was optimistic that they could return as soon as Game 6. So we'll see what happens. I think that the Bucks certainly do have the best value in terms of betting perspective, because, as you stated, Vaughn, it's like the Sixers and the Knicks are just beating the hell out of each other. And the further you can get along without Giannis and Dame, like, they can get rested for it. So, and whoever is avoiding the Boston Celtics, that's a good thing. And now with Kristaps Porzingis going down for what's called several games, I think that there is certainly a path for the Bucks to potentially, if they can get past the Pacers, they got a shot at the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially more. Just wanted to note, like, just crazy, like, how well Bobby Portis guarded Pascal Siakam. Seemed like he couldn't get into a rhythm. Like, Pascal Siakam has been phenomenal, most of this series, and he pretty much just couldn't hit a shot. And then this massive swing in the second and third quarter just really did the Pacers in. So I'm curious to see how Rick Carlisle makes those adjustments heading into Game 6, with pretty much most of his squad not playing well in Game 5.
Yeah, Siakam was outstanding early in the series. I mean, he was putting up 36, 37 points the last 3 games. Now we've seen 17, 13, and 12. So 42 points after 73 in the first 2 games, certainly getting shut down defensively. And I don't know, Raphael, you mentioned Rick Carlisle's not suiting up. He's 6'5", 210. He might want to shoot up and strap some jumpers. Who knows, my man? But I do think that with the injuries the Bucks have, we have to speak on another injury because Jared Allen of Cleveland has probably been one of the most impressive players of any playoff series so far. He's been an absolute stud down low, but he did miss Game 5 with a rib injury. Cleveland got the 1-point victory, Raphael. Orlando had a chance to win at the end now. Another team like Indiana, they're young. They haven't had an opportunity to close out series at all. They have an opportunity to force a Game 7. Can they do it?
I think they can. As we saw when there were 2 wins in Orlando, the biggest thing for them, in addition to the home court, is they didn't turn the ball over. I think with the exception of the first half of Game 4, but then guys like Banchero and Suggs got their stuff together and they pulled away and won that game. So for them, it's always going to be about the turnovers, more so than not having, reliable perimeter shooting, because they're not going to have that at any point in the series. But if they can maintain those possessions and stop giving the ball away, especially the live ball turnovers, I think they're in decent shape. I thought it got a little stagnant in the fourth quarter. Just give Paolo the ball and see if he can create something. Only problem is that he's being guarded by one of the best defenders in the league in Evan Mobley. So they need to figure something else out. I think you want to see a bit more from Franz Wagner in terms of creating. But I think this series is going to go 7. It's going to come down to whether or not Orlando can steal a win in Cleveland.
Yeah, and this is a series where we didn't expect probably any series. Maybe if there was going to be one, it'd be the Knicks Sixers, where the home team wins on every floor on their court because of how hostile the environment is. But it's Cleveland Orlando. And what the Cleveland did in Orlando, Dan, I really can't believe in. 83 and 89 points on 23% from three and 29 turnovers. Big closeout game in Orlando. Raphielle makes a lot of good cases, including the three-point shooting for Orlando's guards, not very good. What's your opinion on the series? Can Orlando win Game 6?
Yeah, they could certainly win. I don't think that they are, though. I got the Cavs in 6. I think the way that Evan Mobley played without Jared Allen is just really indicative of what we as fantasy managers kind of hope for. Just in the clutch, man, this man made several plays around the rim. Defensively, what he brings is just so much upside. And I feel like the amount of star power and experience that this Cavs team has, Max Strus, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, it's going to be too much for the Orlando Magic. And while Paolo Banchero's been amazing, he's also going to, probably fall to earth a little bit. His mid-range game in Game 5 was outstanding. I don't know that that's going to continue. They're going to lock him up or figure out ways to do that, disrupt him, get him out of rhythm. Franz Wagner has also been great, but it's a matter about what's everyone else going to do on the Orlando Magic. Like they shot lights out in Game 3, I think it was. To expect them to do that again, I think we're going to see more of the norm of what the Orlando Magic have been, which has been an inconsistent shooting team. And I think the Cleveland Cavaliers know that, if they take care of the business on Game 6, they can get a little bit of rest and then put their sights on the Boston Celtics, who I actually feel like could actually give them, a way more challenging series than most other people in this situation, considering that they have the advantage in the front court that, without Kristaps Porzingis, that could be a huge opportunity for them to exploit.
Yeah, and we just saw the Minnesota Timberwolves sweep the Phoenix Suns. They had so much size advantage there in that series. And you look at Cleveland, obviously not nearly as talented, especially in the starting five as Boston. But now you kind of sit in a situation where, well, maybe Jared Allen and Evan Mobley will give Boston some problems, and they could steal a game or two. And this becomes a real series. And we know the Boston Celtics are not to be trusted in the playoffs, not even on their home floor. Really 4 wins and 7 losses in their last 11 up until the game tonight against Miami. So, I don't trust Boston, although that they look like the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. Definitely don't trust Cleveland either. But stick with Evan Mobley for a second. Raphielle, where does he go next year in fantasy? Because he is one of those guys where we expect for the next 2, 3, 4 years, he's entering his prime.
Yeah, I think part of it depends on, are they going to keep he and Jared Allen together? They can continue with that, because while Evan Mobley did attempt to step out a bit more and show off a bit more perimeter game, I don't think that's where he's best suited. You want someone else to be that floor spacer, not necessarily a guy who's as good around the basket as he is. Jared Allen's just as good. So I think they kind of cancel each other out from a fantasy standpoint, where you're looking at 5th round value for both guys when the season ends. If one gets moved, I think Mobley, I don't know if I would go as far as to say like 2nd round, but I wouldn't be opposed if he was like a late 2nd round pick by himself. The only issue is that when you have Jared Allen there too, you may pick him 3rd or 4th round, but you're kind of thinking, all right, if I get top 50, that's probably going to be the most that I'll get if those two are on the floor together for the whole season. Yeah,
certainly hard to believe full-time into that duo, especially when they miss some time, but it makes it easier kind of decide who you want to play. But Dan, are you in the same boat with where you would have Evan Mobley fall, a guy that's certainly going to be rising on some draft boards?
Yeah, I think anytime that Jared Allen missed time, you saw what the upside of Evan Mobley was. Like, he was in that top 30, top 20, like 2nd round value consideration. But when they play on the floor together, it kind of caps his upside. So I'm with Raph. I would still keep them both around that 4th, 5th round territory. But if anyone were to get moved, I think we could see Mobley potentially move up to like a 3rd round value.
Yeah, I agree. I think long-term, Evan Mobley is the better player, the more talented player. But, earlier in the series, you could see why Jared Allen was kind of taking over here and getting all the hoorah with his rebounding. But Evan Mobley, a guy that's putting up double digits in all 5 games so far in this series, and also throwing up 2 steals in each of the last 2 games with 2 blocks apiece in each of the last 2 games. So we're talking about 8 stocks in his last 2 games. Big deal there for Cleveland. Let's head over to Miami. They played tonight. They lost a lot of players. And Boston's down players too. We mentioned Porzingis already, but Jaquez, he's out. Terry Rozier and Jimmy Butler are still out for Miami. There's been no offense for the Heat, Dan, to the point where I don't expect them to reach 85 points tonight. But prove me wrong, Miami. So what do you think is going to happen here? And if Boston does win tonight, what do you expect for them, as you mentioned, against Cleveland potentially or Orlando in the next series?
Yeah, this series is a wrap. It's nice that Miami got one game, but I think the injuries are just mounting too much. Now with Jaime Jaquez down, they're just going to be dealing with scraps here at this point. So, yeah, I'd be curious, Vaughn. What is the team total for Miami?
It was set at 84.5.
Yikes!
That's what I said. I don't think they get.
Yeah, so that pretty much just that seals the deal there. That's crazy, especially even for a playoff game. But yeah, I think Boston could set their sights on just trying to get Kristaps Porzingis healthy. That second round matchup, I think, is actually going to be pretty fun. I think Derek White is the X factor here. I mean, when he goes off for 30 plus points, I saw some kind of stat or some kind of a joke being made is like the value that you're getting for a Derek White versus like a Tobias Harris. Tobias will never go for that 30 piece, that unexpected 30 piece that you need to help you win a series or a game. Whereas I feel like the Celtics certainly have that. And I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be a tough matchup for Cleveland. Just in the backcourt, you have Drew Holiday and Derek White locking up your guard play. Where does that really leave the vulnerability? So we'll see. This could be a big series for the big men for Cleveland. They're going to need to be healthy. So hopefully they'll get Jared Allen back. But I think the Cleveland can at least get a couple of games on Boston if that actually ends up being the matchup.
Yeah, and I'll note I said 84.5, 94.5 is the Miami team total.
I think you were right with 84.5.
Yeah, I think my first response sounded more correct. So I think I know where I'll be putting my money tonight. But You mentioned, Derek White dropping 38 points, 15 of 26 shooting from the field, 8 of 15 from three. I mean, that is literally as efficient as it gets, Raphael. And Dan's right. Tobias Harris, he wishes he could do that. I got the Celtics in 6 against the Cavs. If the Celtics played the Magic, I would go Celtics in 5. What say you? And Jaime Jaquez, what's your viewpoint on him next year?
I'm not saying Miami is going to come back and win this series, but I'm kind of afraid to just shovel dirt on them and put them 6 feet deep at this point, because as we saw in game 2, they're capable of coming up with that statistical outlier. They probably have too many guys out at this point to do it, but if anybody can figure out a scheme to kind of make things difficult for the Celtics, it would probably be Eric Spoelstra. So, and the visiting team has had the upper hand in this series over the last 3 years or so. So I don't know. We'll see. But I think if you're Boston, you certainly want to get this done tonight, because game 6 of the Cleveland-Orlando series isn't until Friday. They go to game 7. You're looking at Sunday. Now, obviously, Porzingis probably won't be back by then, but it's about getting a guy like Al Horford as much rest as you can. Like we've seen him fill in as a starter before. You want to get him as much time as you can to gear up for possibly dealing with either 2 bigs in Cleveland or the variety of bigs that Orlando can throw at you. None of them are elite, but they have bodies, and that's a bit of a difference, in terms of the styles of play there. So I still think Boston's a favorite in either one. We've seen Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard step up when the opportunity arises as well. To go to your Jaquez question, I think he had a really good rookie year, one of the best rookies. He's not in that Holmgren or Wemby class, but I think that part of that second group of rookies. So you're looking at maybe, late round value in terms of fantasy, maybe a bit higher depending on what Miami's roster looks like next season. But I think when he was healthy, and then also what we've seen from Nikola Jovic, I think those are 2 guys to kind of watch during the offseason in terms of what that roster build is going to look like and whether or not you could potentially put both of them in position where they can be drafted. But I think Jaquez will certainly be a guy who should be drafted in standard league drafts next fall.
Yeah, I think Jaquez is a guy that they could end up building around in the future, having him be a main piece of the rotation for years to come. Miami, they're a team that, like you said, they have the outlier performances, but they're a team that right now, as hard as they are going to play, I don't think they have that offensive chemistry with certain guys. You need Caleb Barton to step up aside Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. And I got a little thing for Bam Adebayo hitting his first career 3. I lost the points, rebounds, assist prop by 1 point because he hit a 3. Come on, bro. What a time. But it's also a commonality. I almost forgot to say, because when Raphael was talking, all my mind could go to when you said Al Horford getting extra rest because he'll need it. Al Horford and Luke Cornett versus Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Wow. Man, I like Luke a lot more when you think about that.
I mean, but let's be honest, Cornette's not going to be out on the floor very much. Like on the
Well,
other end, they're going to have to deal with either Tatum or Jalen Brown defensively.
Yeah.
So not like we're looking at Luke Cornette playing like 28 to 30 minutes per night just because Porzingis is out.
His 8 minutes are going to result in a -12 real plus-minus minutes there.
He won't be playing 8 minutes then.
Yeah, let's say game 1, 8 minutes, game 2, 2 minutes. All right, that's it for Luke Cornette for the series. But I'm excited to see how that one pans out. But I do want to mention too, because when injuries happen in the NBA, people are quick to take a team that are down the star player or getting somebody back. But that's not really how it works in the NBA. And if you don't believe me, just look at the Clippers series in particular with Kawhi Leonard when he plays. So we'll start there, Dan, because pivotal game 5 for them. Luckily for us, we were correct when we said the series is going 6 or 7 games. But we still have to get the winner correct here. Who do you like, the Mavericks or the Clippers? Because this one looks like it could be coming down to the final game of the series.
I have Mavs in 6. I still think that can happen. James Harden's been playing amazing basketball offensively. And he's really just he's picked it up in Kawhi's absence. And I just don't know the volatility of the Clippers. You're just going to have to get 2 more good games out of them. And I just feel like it's just going to fall on their face at some point. Like it's either going to be Harden or Paul George is going to miss. Like something's going to happen. But Kyrie Irving's also been outstanding. And, Luka Doncic playing through injuries. I think the Mavericks are just going to prove to be the better team and eventually face the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I wouldn't be mad if the Clippers made it to the second round with all the hate that they've really been getting either.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers were the better team for maybe 50, 60, 70% of the season. And then over the last 2 months, the Dallas Mavericks have been one of the best teams in the NBA. Still playing like it in a lot of ways, Raphielle. I don't believe in the Mavericks defense, but the offensive firepower of both these teams has definitely been on display through 4 games. What do you expect in game 5, and who do you like to win the series?
I think the Clippers win at home in game 5. I think it's going 7. I'll take Dallas in 7 just because I feel like Luka's going to figure things out. I know he isn't healthy, but the efficiency hasn't been there either. I think he'll figure some things out. That said, the Clippers now have, I wouldn't say finality, but they know what their rotation is going to be. I thought when Kawhi returned, they're a bit too deferential to him. Now that they know he's going to be out, I guess you'd say indefinitely, because they're going to wait until he can do everything he needs to do on the court to bring him back. They know it's going to be Harden and George leading the way. You got Norman Powell coming off the bench. You got Zubats in terms of what he can do in the 2-man game, especially working with Harden. They know what the rotation is. They know where their shot should come from. So I think that's going to help them. It's just that when you've got a guy like Luka Doncic, he's still putting up some high point totals, just hasn't been playing at the level we expect from him. When he's still got that much room to move to reach his ceiling, I think that's going to be the difference, especially with Kyrie playing as well as he has in this series.
Yeah, I think we saw Paul George have a phenomenal first half in game 4 that kind of fall off in the second half.
Yeah.
You don't really see that happen with a Luka Doncic. Like, this guy's going to be able to go get his at all times. So I am with you. I think this series does go 7. I actually like the Clippers tonight too at home. And then I think the Mavericks get the game 6 win, and then game 7 as well. But, if Luka Doncic goes for 50, then I'll take the Clippers. That seems to be what happens whenever he does that. But I want to make a note too that the thing what's made me most proud of watching this series probably has been the response of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford buying in to Dallas, buying in to beefing with LA Clippers, buying in to I'll fight you, Russell Westbrook. And that shows you they are tired of the losing and being on these losing teams, the Wizards, the Hornets, and now they have a chance to make some noise in the postseason. So I do feel like the Dallas Mavericks did everything they had to at the trade deadline in order to be in this position and to make some noise. So let's hope we see a 7-game series there in the West as well. But it's not just exciting for basketball too. We got some other exciting stuff going on, like the most exciting 2 minutes in all of sports. Don't miss the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby at the Churchill Downs. Coverage starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday, only on NBC and Peacock. And then after you're done with the Churchill Downs Saturday night, we got some Nuggets-Lakers action. Oops, no, Lakers are out of the mix. Yeah. That's right. Let's go. Like I said, Nuggets would destroy them. They should have won in 4, but we'll take the 5. So Nuggets now got that rest advantage. Timberwolves do. Before we get there, what is next for the Los Angeles Lakers, Raphael? Because you probably already turned off your TV multiple times and people talking about, will he retire? Will he play with Bronny? What does he care about? We don't care about none of that. We care about what the Lakers roster could look like next season. What do you expect them to try and do in the offseason?
I think that's the biggest question in terms of what's LeBron going to do. He's got a player option with over $51 million. I, for one, couldn't understand leaving that type of money on the table, but he's made a lot more money in his career than I have. So he probably has a different line of thinking in that regard. I think that's going to be the big question. Also, what happens with Darvin Ham? A lot of rumors and conversations about his job and whether or not that's safe. I think that's something to figure out. D'Angelo Russell also has a player option. He's had his moments, but where he's been good, and he's had his moments where he's been really bad. So I think they've got a lot of questions. I think the one, Austin Reeves and Anthony Davis are under contract for next season. Maybe they get a full year out of Gabe Vincent, which they didn't get. Had some other guys injured, but yeah, I think the LeBron question is the biggest one hovering over this team in terms of fantasy managers.
Yeah, $51 million doesn't sound like something he'd pass up on, but at the same time, Dan, we never know what's going on through his head. They'll probably have some money situation. There'll be players out there like, we talked about all year. My guys, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine. There's the Trae Youngs of the world too. Rumors have it Donovan Mitchell might be looking to get out of his situation in Cleveland as well. Devin Booker, they've been talking about he's keep be out there too this summer. Teams looking to trade for him. The New York Knicks, the latest rumor. Raphael.
Nah, hell no.
Yeah,
only one person has said that. I'm just going to say that. Only one person has said that.
Yeah, and it makes sense because when I saw that, I was like, yeah, I doubt that Devin Booker ends up at MSG, but that would be certainly pretty cool. It'd be a 2K move for sure. So my question to you, Dan, is what are you expecting the Los Angeles Lakers to do? Do you think LeBron returns?
Yeah, Bron's going to be back. It just makes so much sense for his personal life and what he's building for his brand not to leave LA. And let's not forget, they did raise that in-season tournament banner. So, there's unfinished business to be had here. But the first thing they need to do, re-sign, let Bron, hopefully he's going to exercise that. He's either going to exercise his player deal or he's going to sign a new deal for 2 years or whatever. They need to fire Darvin Ham. It's just not working out. His lack of in-game adjustments and the rotations taking too long to figure out, even going into the postseason, definitely hampered them. And yeah, you can always look at injuries. That was his excuse all year long. We've had injuries. Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt. That's true. But Raph just talked about it. D'Lo was better than advertised, but the D'Lo experience is you're bad and you're good sometimes. That's D'Lo. At this point, they should have traded Austin Reeves last year. Because that was to me, that was the best opportunity to get something of value for him. You can still get something and I've seen the rumors of packaging Austin Reeves and some futures for Trae Young, but that's not how you win in the NBA nowadays. You can't do this 3-star construct anymore. It doesn't work. So I don't know. The Lakers got way bigger issues at hand here. They got to build out their depth. D'Lo ain't it. So I would try to package him, Austin Reeves, whatever, and then just figure it out after that because I don't know. Maybe you think about, do you continue to try to just build around LeBron? Because it's obviously not working. That bubble championship, I'm not going to give it an asterisk, but I don't know. That was the weakest championship we've seen. So they haven't really done anything since then. What did they do? They created the play-in tournament.
No.
LeBron literally hated on it. And it's the only reason his legacy. Point.
I feel you. I just disagree with the idea that the bubble championship was weaker. There are issues away from the game itself that were far more difficult to deal with than at any point. So I think
100%.
That's why I wouldn't give it an asterisk. But on the flip side, I do understand why people would cite that season just because that was when LeBron and AD both played 70 games, and they had a 3-month. You're not going to say they had 3 months off because you're fighting a global pandemic and other issues, but that time off certainly maybe preserve their legs to a certain extent in terms of make sure they're healthy for the stretch run. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
No, totally feel you. I'm just saying that, they're old as hell, and they have a very limited future. And if you're going to continue to build around LeBron James and whatever coach wants to coach his team, you have a 2-year window of anything. And then it's all going to blow up because what's LeBron? LeBron's not going to play for more than 3 years. So I don't know. I feel like they're just in a bad spot. If I'm them, I would not go out to get like Trae Young. That just sounds like a bad move.
Yeah,
I don't think he helps.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. I mean, Paul George, another also player that's got the player option too. Maybe a little Kevin Love, LeBron James reunion, huh? He comes back as Kevin Love opts out. But no, I do not think they should be building around a 39-year-old either, Dan. I think that's common sense. If you're going to build around somebody, it would be Anthony Davis for another year or two, and go from there and trade as many players as you can, the D'Los, the Reeves, the Rui Hachimaras, and get as much back as possible. But I am not excited for the future of LA. I'm tired of hearing the saga of LeBron James. Not to say I want the man to retire. I just want us to let him do what he has to do and this team to actually build themselves up, because these 2-3 superstar teams, you said, are not doing what they have to do to win championships. And the Phoenix Suns were the best example of that, getting swept by the Timberwolves. So let's talk about that, Raphael, because I thought the Suns could win that series. I thought the Suns were a good bet when they were down 2-0, and I think the Suns are trash now. So my entire opinion on this team has changed. But yeah, they got to blow it up. Am I right? Like Kevin Durant, you got to think about your future. Someone said Kevin Durant has been a part of the 2 most miserable 3 superstar teams in NBA history. Can't argue with that. Devin Booker, your time in Phoenix might be coming to an end soon, and Bradley Beal, not quite the guy we thought he used to be.
Yeah, the thing is, like, what room? How are they going to create room here in terms of their salary structure to free up the space they need for one to get a point guard? Because Beal and Booker handling those responsibilities just did not work. And this is completely different than what we saw last season with Minnesota, where they could say, we only had Towns on the floor for 29 games. That's why we can kind of run this back, and we've seen how successful that's been. This is completely different. I know Beal missed a lot of time due to injuries, but he struggled to stay healthy for years now. And point guard is completely different than power forward in terms of your responsibility. So I think the question is, how do they go about changing things up? What happens with Frank Vogel? They've lost Kevin Young, who was the highest paid assistant in the NBA. He took the BYU job. So it's like, okay, how are you going to figure out your staff? Does Matt Ishbia get, the itchy fingers and decide to make a move with James Jones as well as a GM? So I think there's a lot on the table for this team, because we've seen them not just get eliminated from the playoffs in recent years, but it's been an embarrassing fashion. Yeah. Whether you talk about the sweep this year or a couple blowouts in seasons past. So it's not just physical. There's a bit of a mental hurdle that franchise needs to clear as well.
Yeah, and I definitely enjoyed the Anthony Edwards trash talking throughout the series. I enjoyed people bringing up the old Instagram reels of Anthony Edwards talking smack on Phoenix while they were in the playoffs, saying they were talking so much trash on us, I can't wait to get my lick back. Certainly got that and more. And the big factor was, as you said, Cat being on the floor in this series, staying out of foul trouble too. Dan, I mean, I'm sure you were super impressed with them. What is your ranking of Anthony Edwards next year? And do you think Minnesota could knock off Denver?
Oh, yeah, they definitely can. The one thing about the Minnesota lineup, I think you talked about it before, is just like their size. And they also have the depth to combat the Nuggets. I mean, the Nuggets starting lineup is elite. Like, their on-off numbers incomparable to most. And I don't know, I just feel like there's a changing of the guard happening, as I talked about before. And it's like all these younger players are not scared of this old regime. And not that the Nuggets are old, but they're ready to take heads off, man. And I think that Anthony Edwards going through and that team going through a Suns team that had so much veteran experience and just stardom, they're ready for whoever's coming next. And I think this is going to be a great series. It's definitely going to be the marquee series to watch of the second round. And I can't wait to see what happens, man. Like, because I think that it's going to be really interesting to watch Jokic have to battle a front court like Gobert, Naz Reid, and Karl Anthony Towns. But then also Michael Porter Jr. has been amazing. I'll talk about him a little bit later. But I think he's been the most consistent player for the Nuggets outside of outside of Nikola Jokic. But Jamal Murray, just another level of his clutch factor, man. This dude is a beast when the game is on the line. I want to go back to the Phoenix Suns real quick because they're screwed. That no trade clause for Bradley Beal is going to be ugly, and it's going to hamstring their future more than anything. The only option they really have is to trade Devin Booker and Kevin Durant to get out of this. And I think it makes a lot of sense to trade Kevin Durant. He's a mercenary for hire anyway. I saw it kind of been rumored around. A couple of my colleagues were talking about potentially Kevin Durant going to like the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that's really interesting, but I feel like there's going to be some team that's going to find the services for Kevin Durant this offseason. There's no way that after re-signing Grayson Allen to that extension and having to build out the rest of that team that they're not going to have to sacrifice one of that big three.
Yeah, no, that's 100% a great point because I feel like time is running out for those two to be playing together. Kevin Durant is probably at the point in his career where, he said in his post-game interview, like, I just love ball. This is the most important thing in my life, and I'm not looking to retire or be done anytime soon. I think he'll probably be able to pick where he wants to go next year. And that's important, especially when you're a LeBron, a KD. You don't want to end up in, no offense, but Orlando or Charlotte or Washington. You want to end up on a team that's going to compete right away and have a chance to win. Not that Orlando won't, but
Orlando's interesting actually.
Yeah, they are. They need shooters, as we mentioned too. They're going to have a lot of cap space. So they're going to be a team worth watching and could take a step next year. As Minnesota Timberwolves kind of took that step, Oklahoma City Thunder, the Orlando Magic could be that team doing that next year. But back to the Nuggets and Wolves, Raphielle, because this is a situation where Denver now, Jamal Murray's banged up. Reggie Jackson's not 100%. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's not 100%. So the guards for Denver are kind of getting weak. And now you see Minnesota with a huge height advantage down low. What does this series look like for Minnesota to win?
That's a good question. I think, Tim Connolly, their chief executive, before this was in Denver. He built that juggernaut into what it is. And when he got to Minnesota, he set about building a roster that can take that behemoth on. So I think that's going to make for a really fun series. I think it'll go 7. For Minnesota, it's all about Cat. Anthony Edwards, he didn't really call him out after game 4. He pretty much said, you got to stay on the floor. So I think that's going to be the most important thing there. Now, him having to guard, he's probably going to have to match up with Aaron Gordon, so it may not be too difficult, but there may be times when he has to deal with Michael Porter Jr. And that's where you get a bit concerned because I don't know about Cat having to defend in space. That's going to be the one thing you kind of want to avoid. Rudy Gobert has been outstanding. We've seen Jaden McDaniels step up and have some good games. Mike Conley as well, and their bench is clearly superior to Denver's bench in terms of what they're getting on a consistent basis from a Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Kyle Anderson's going to have a few days to get healthy before that series starts on Saturday. So I don't know if I'm going to pick Minnesota in 7. I just think it's going to go the distance.
Yeah, I think right now, as odds is, they say 6 and 7 games in the series are the same price. So that's basically what they're saying is this will go 6 or 7. But the winner is up in the air right now. There's a lot of respected money coming in on Minnesota. And, I love Denver. I think the Nuggets have a very good chance of going back-to-back. But the more that I look at the recent situation for both these teams and the injury status, it does make me think Minnesota has an opportunity to steal this series and make some noise. So let me ask you this, Dan. If Minnesota does win this series, who would you be saying is going to be the NBA Finals MVP? Because now we have Anthony Edwards in the West potentially making it. You'll have the Thunder versus who else would you get there in the West? The other
either Clippers or Mavericks.
Yeah, probably the Mavericks, we would say. So you're looking at Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic. Who are these guys? Who are you most confident in if you were going to say, I'm going to put my money on this guy and his team? Who do you like outside the Nuggets?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping on the Thunder Mavericks matchup in the second round because I think that one's going to be the most prolific in terms of like MVP caliber guys going at it. And like I think that's like a welcome to the league moment for SGA to kind of become like a household name. Like people, even though he's in the MVP conversation, the average casuals probably don't know SGA like that comparatively to Luka. So like this is an opportunity for him to become like the face of the league. I'm going to put my money. I love the Thunder's team. I think that they're just more complete. They're a top 5 in offensive and defensive rating this year. And I think that they're kind of not getting talked about enough. They are second. I think they have the second shortest odds to win the championship right now, or at least to come out of the Western Conference. I'm gonna put my money on Thunder, man. I think this is an SGA thing, and I'll probably go SGA and then Ant, because I think Ant is gonna draw all the allure of the highlight plays. Obviously the charisma that he has, like he's next up. So I would say if the Minnesota Timberwolves can get past the Nuggets, I think it's going to be Ant and or SGA.
Yeah, we would root for the Thunder here because just like your hat, we got Thunder's Bucks matchup for Raphael's White Christmas. So we're still trying to get paid on the show.
Dude, that would be a wild NBA Finals if that ended up.
Honestly, $10 now would make more money than $10 back then on it. So I should probably get back in on it. That's for the Milwaukee, how far they've fallen.
Time value of money.
Yes, but I am excited to talk about the Oklahoma City the Thunder though on the other side of this break. Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing. I think you asked and I forgot to answer. Where would Anthony Edwards go in drafts? He's one of only 11 players to average 25, 5, and 5. I feel like someone could reach for him as like an early second, but I'd probably be more comfortable taking him as like a mid-second.
How about you, Raphael?
I think it's fair. I think he's someone I'd try to grab. If you're like picking late first, grab him on the turn. Early second, I would do that then because obviously he's not going to be available for you that next time around. So, yeah, I think second round, he's safe second round pick, I think.
Yeah, you're looking at a potential MVP next season, Anthony Edwards. He's going to make that jump to probably scoring 28, 30 points per game. SGA, Luka Doncic, those three are probably the guys you'd look at for MVP tickets next season, in my opinion. Big schedule NBA this weekend, but on Sunday, you should be checking out Liverpool and Tottenham as they face off in a must-win match as time is running out on the Premier League season. Can the Reds keep pace atop the table, or can the Spurs make a late push into the top four? Find out 11:30 a.m. Eastern exclusively on Peacock. And I cashed out Thunder 4-0 sweep on the Pelicans. Like we all said, this is a Thunder podcast pretty much. They have held it down for us all year. So we can, of course, give credit to them. But on the other side of the spectrum, Raphael, the Pelicans, without Zion, they kind of fell to pieces there at the end. So McCollum not looking as healthy. Brandon Ingram was on restricted minutes for a while. Valanciunas might have been the best player in that series for the Pelicans. You say no, but I say yes.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just thinking there are times when he didn't play at all in the second half. And it was kind of strange how his minutes were handled, not just in the series, but throughout the regular season. Now, because Zion was out, he had to play more in this series. He'll be a free agent. Brandon Ingram has 1 year left on his deal. So I think those are the two guys I would be looking at when you think about David Griffin's comments that there are going to be some major changes this summer. It's been known that Willie Green hasn't been the biggest fan of Jonas Valanciunas. So I wouldn't expect him back, especially when he's getting like $24 million this season. Ingram, you got the injuries plus the fact he's got like a $36 million price tag for next year, the final year of his deal. He'd probably be considerably easier to move than Zion. And also, he doesn't have the upside that Zion has. So I think that's going to be a ride that they're not going to be too eager to hop off of. But if they move anybody, I really think it's going to be Brandon Ingram because he was absolutely poor in this series. But they clearly have to make some changes, especially when you have the wild card that is Zion Williamson's health.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing too, because they may move Ingram and then build around Zion Williamson, and this game maybe get hurt next year or the year after that, and you're looking at a potential similar situation to you're in now, where you may never get over that hump. And you spoke, Jonas Valanciunas get in the bag. He'll be a free agent this offseason. You got Jose Alvarado with the team option. He's probably the safest guy to be brought back because Najee Marshall, Cody Zeller, and Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who also has a team option, are all going to be potential free agents this offseason, Dan. So any of those guys sticking around, Jose Alvarado maybe, and then what do you expect from New Orleans in the offseason, if anything?
I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to upgrade from Jose Alvarado. There's going to be some way better backup point guards that can offer a little bit more offensively. Like, yeah, he's a good defensive player in spurts, but I think that they need more size there behind CJ McCollum. But I think that it's going to be inevitable that Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson is going to be traded. At this point, you have too much money tied up in CJ McCollum, BI, and Zion. And let's be real. Zion doesn't really want to play in New Orleans anyway. The dude's been trying to get out of there since he became there. So at this point, I think you would get more value out of trading Zion than BI. And then if BI comes off the books next year, you could be in a nice position, depending on that draft capital, to kind of rebuild your roster around Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who are also going to be due for an extension at some point. And to be honest, like, Trey Murphy's too good to be coming off the bench. Yeah. You're not going to bench Herb because he's one of the best defenders in the league. So something's got to give here. And I think it's going to be, I think it makes sense for them to move BI the most, because if you're looking at direct translation, like, I think you could insert Zion around two shooters. Yeah. I think we can consider Herb a shooter now. Like, he improved from three dramatically from last season. I think that makes sense more. But if you're looking at a longer term view here, you could get a hell of a haul for Zion Williamson just based off the marketability, the talent, upside, all that comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a lot of young pieces too. I mean, these guys aren't playing in the postseason. You know, Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins. But these are guys that, you know, they drafted to play the next few seasons and get that experience. So even if Jose Alvarado isn't brought back, they do have two younger guards who are instant offense right away for them. But I personally hope Alvarado would end up on a team that has a playoff ability, because, I mean, that guy is sparks in the playoffs. And he's Patrick Beverly Jr., in my opinion. He's the second coming of Pat Bev. But I want to talk about the biggest disappointment so far in the postseason and the biggest surprises, or who impressed you the most. Raphielle, you could start with either or, but what's on your mind?
In terms of a team disappointment, it's the Phoenix Suns. I don't think we need to spend much more time on them than what we've already done. Like, whatever, man. You know, get them out of here. But
whatever, man.
Yeah, like, seriously, I'm not even a Suns fan. I know some Suns fans are absolutely tired of it at this point. But in terms of the team that's impressed me, I would go with Minnesota and New Orleans, just because of their youth and the business-like approach they took to just ending their series as soon as they possibly could. So those would be my picks for the most impressive teams thus far in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like that. I think for me, I've been really, obviously, Minnesota is the easy one. I mean, they have been amazing to watch so far and what they did to Phoenix. But I liked how Oklahoma City responded after Game 1's very close outcome. They looked like they kind of put it together, believed in themselves. And they're a bunch of dogs, woof, woof, as they do. They bark all the time in their post game, which I absolutely love. So they have been probably the most impressive team to me so far. And the biggest disappointment, I mean, the Suns would be easy, but I'll be honest, it's probably the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, what you did on the road in games 3 and 4 at Orlando was, I mean, distasteful coming from Eastern Conference guy. And I think that they should have definitely handled at least one of those games in Orlando and shouldn't have won by 1 at home against Orlando. So why they look like the team that will win that series, I think Cleveland has been a big disappointment and will look pretty different next season. Dan, what say you?
Who I was most impressed with is definitely the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'd also give an honorable mention to the Oklahoma City Thunder, both two teams that took care of business. Probably more impressive on the Phoenix side, just given the injuries on the Pelicans side. But I think the Thunder looked great. They had like a 93.5 defensive rating, held the Pelicans to under 40% shooting from the field, 30% from the three-point line. Like, that's just insane defense. And we're not even talking about their offense. So I'm really excited to see what they can do going forward. Disappointments, obvious answer is the Phoenix Suns, but I'm going to sound a bit hypocritical here, being that my squad is still in the trenches of a battle. But I feel like the Sixers have been pretty disappointing. And it's mainly because of Joel Embiid's injury, but I think it's also just shined a light on how bad the Sixers are when Embiid is off the floor, and how unathletic the team is in general, and their inability to create a shot outside of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. Like, it's painful to watch this team play basketball, and I'm amazed that they're still in it, to be honest. So, yeah, I think that's probably been my biggest disappointment. I just expected more out of the role players and the team at large besides Maxey and Embiid.
Honesty from a fan himself, I can appreciate that. And, yeah, I mean, I didn't expect a whole lot from a couple of those players. Neither was Raphielle, but I still think that we have time to turn around there in that series. So just relax, Dan. You enjoy your day until you get to that game.
Hey, man, I'm just riding off Tyrese Maxey's energy right now.
That's a lot of energy.
Dude is the savior.
Well, let me ask you this then, because we talked about a week ago about some players who could make a difference. We wrote a joint article together too, all about a different player that could make be a household name, I should say, in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I picked Tyrese Halliburton, which I've been impressed about, but Tyrese Maxey's been a guy who I feel like you might have picked, if I'm not mistaken. But
no, I had Jalen Williams, actually, who's played very well.
It was a great pick. It was a great pick. So let's start with those two players then. Where do you look at them from a strictly fantasy perspective next year, Maxey and Williams?
Yeah, I mean, Maxey's I think he's going to he's definitely pushed himself up into the mid-second, maybe even early second, depending on what this team does, from a roster construction standpoint. Because, I mean, I would be hard-pressed to think that Maxey can't take a leap to like a 27, 28 points per game, 6 or 7 assists. Like, it's in reason. So, yeah, I think it's warranted. Jalen Williams, I feel like, could probably get to like 4th round. I don't know that I'm going to take him higher than that. I think generally he was like a 5th, 6th round last year, Raph.
65.7 in terms of Yahoo ADP.
Okay. Yeah. So I could think he could probably creep up into 4th range, but the only problem is like there's just so many mouths to feed in Oklahoma City. He'll still get his and he's efficient. But I don't know how much more growth you can get without, maybe Josh Giddey being traded and, they get someone that's like a less usage guy that he can up his assists, his rebounds, and his scoring. So I do like Jalen next year, though. I mean, because he's probably one of the more efficient guards you can get in that 4th round there.
And that would be a surprising name for me. And I think a lot of other people drafting fantasy basketball, seeing Jalen Williams coming off the board in the 4th round. But he has certainly been a guy that is climbing the ranks right now and making himself household name in Oklahoma City and some other markets too. So I'm excited to see how good he can get. How about you, Raphielle? Who do you think has increased their stock this postseason?
J-Dub would have been my pick. He played 37 minutes per game in that 1st round series, shared the team lead in assists with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 5 per game. Now, he's not going to play 37 minutes per night during the regular season, but I feel like even through the regular season, we saw that, maybe Josh Giddey isn't the best fit for that starting spot, and he's extension eligible this summer. So I really think he's someone to keep an eye on, as Dan said, in terms of potential trade, because they've got Cason Wallace, they've got Aaron Wiggins, they've got Isaiah Joe. Those guys are all low usage players who can offer value in that spot if Oklahoma City wanted to fill that spot from within, should they trade Josh Giddey. And then you're looking at more playmaking opportunities for Jalen Williams. Now, the other one, Tyrese Maxey, as you said, I think he's an easy 2nd round pick. I don't know if I would go as far as to squeeze him in at the end of the 1st round, but if someone wanted to make that reach, I wouldn't have a problem with it, because clearly as a restricted free agent, he's going to get that type of money this summer. Now, I'm interested to see what teams emerge. Why not Orlando? They need a point guard and they need shooting. He can do both really well. So I don't know what their exact money situation is, but if you can throw out a contract that can strengthen your roster and weaken a roster of a potential contender alongside you, why not do it? So I think Tyrese Maxey, he's going to be one of the biggest names to watch in free agency, because Philly has to pay him, but he can strengthen a lot of teams in the NBA if they wanted to throw a large contract his way.
Yeah, he ain't going nowhere.
Oh, hey, if he moves, Daryl Morey's going to get run out of town.
Oh yeah.
You can't. That can't happen. But I'm just saying, if you're another team that needs a point guard, and you're contending, right? You're getting close to contending as Orlando is. Why not roll the dice? I think Philly can give him an extra year. Yeah. Why not give him the 4-year max?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's going to be getting the bag, man. I think he's a max player. Dan, I know you'll agree with that.
He's max for Maxey for sure.
Yeah, I think he will be staying in Philadelphia no matter the price. But we won't be back until May 15th. And by that point, we could be looking it'll be game 5 past that for Denver and Minnesota. We'll be looking at some of these series, games 3, games 4. So in the next 2 weeks, do we have any predictions or anything we want to throw out there for everybody? or it could be just as simple as, hey, come check out my work at NBC or Yahoo because I'm going to have some hot takes. But anything you guys want to say before we get out of here about the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, check out my work on Yahoo. Be doing some NBA stuff too. I feel like there's just too much, man. I feel like every day is like completely different, man. We have no idea what's coming next. So what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks could be completely different what's on my mind right now. So yeah, I'm just hoping and praying that, the Sixers can make it through and I can be way happier and not have to hear it from you two on the Knicks going into the second round.
Raphael?
Yeah. I clearly disagree. Start on some team by team, fantasy look backs. Obviously, by the end of this week, more than half the league will be done playing basketball. So, good time to get that stuff kickstarted. And before you know it, we'll probably be talking about draft prospects at some point. Many of whom really have no idea who the hell they are. So, yeah.
We'll get you caught up on that, my man. I'll be covering the NBA draft as well when that comes, but let's not rush to that point in the season. Enjoy the playoffs as we have it right here. But all I'll say is I watched a documentary on Matt Barnes and Derek Fisher today, so that's what I encourage you guys to go do because it was a pretty good documentary. And I found out that Matt Barnes was one of the best.
Smoke.
Yeah, he did want smoke. One of the best high school football players in California. Matt Barnes had 28 touchdown receptions. Could have went pro in football, apparently. So did not know that. So hopefully I taught you something new today if I didn't in the past hour. But want to say thank you from Dan Titus and Raphielle Johnson and myself, Vaughn Dalzell, for tuning in with us and watching on Twitch. Want to say thank you to the producers behind the stage as well, holding us down as always. Enjoy the NBA playoffs. It is fun-filled with drama. And Knicks in 7. You heard it here from me and Raphael first. He said Knicks in 6. Never mind. Sorry, Dan. You lost anyways.